Passion is one thing, being good at something else is something else. The leadership of the organization is the one that kind of sets the culture, right? And you've got to walk the talk. It's not a clean, path, right? So it is a bit messy, very challenging, but exciting for me.
20 plus years experience in the corporate sector. A corporate leader turns into a startup founder. And this startup is providing companies the most valuable asset. And that asset is people, human resource. I welcome Wael Khoury in our podcast. Wael, thank you so much for your precious time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here tonight.
As I mentioned earlier in my introduction that you had experience of 20 years in corporate sector. After spending so much time in corporate sector, you decided to launch your own consultancy firm and you will be going to provide the most valuable asset to companies. So how this transition happened?
I think after it's a good thing you start your entrepreneurship or your spirit entrepreneurial spirit. I guess is always there, but I'm glad I did it this time. I guess it came at the perfect time because after years of experience and working in diverse environments, countries, cultures, working for different types of organizations and consulting and in operations, the time came. It was just right to really do your own thing and start my own business. And I had my own vision of what I wanted LKA or Lopez Khoury and Associates, my consultancy to focus on and to be known for. And we've constantly, the first year was really adapting that a bit and then getting out there and getting into the market. But now we're really more and more reshaping what the company is all about, right? Not just essentially providing advisory services on human capital and change management and leadership, but really kind of charting the course for bringing leading practices, sharing knowledge, building communities, and driving the thought leadership around human capital and the value of human capital for organizations, especially in the Middle East and the GCC. So that's what it's all about, and it's taken a lot of gone through a lot of transformations, essentially, the company over the past year and a half in such a short time. And we continue to build and get involved in various initiatives, which we're happy to talk about.
I will definitely going to agree with you. And from your previous conversation, I will going to drive another question, which is most relevant. And many young entrepreneurs they think that after launching my own startup, I will be my own boss, right? But uh, and they think that things will become much easier for them. But what is the harsh reality after becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, part of it is the excitement that you can be your own boss and set your own time, and you have that all that independence, which is true to an extent. But if you do want to build really something of value, and you have this vision that's very big, you can't do it alone. You have to essentially build a team at the end of the day, and you're working many more hours than you did potentially as an employee of a company, which I know I do, and days before where I was working hard as well and lots of hours. So this is much more than that, and it stretches into nights sometimes and weekends, etc. But you're happy doing it, right? You're not complaining. It's really something because you're so passionate about it. There's so many things you want to do and accomplish. You want to scale very quickly, get into different initiatives and ideas, and you just got to pace yourself right at the right pace to do that. But it has been exciting. But yes, there's ups and downs, and there's things you try out that don't work out, lessons learned. But the idea is to quickly do try something out, have the courage to do it, fail quickly, learn again, chart the right course, and really aim big for what you want to do. So it's not a clean path, right? So it is a bit messy, very challenging, but exciting for me.
Our listeners or viewers they belong to 18 to 35 years of age group, and many students they are university college graduates, and they think that after completing their degree they will create a resume and they will apply for jobs, and damn they will going to get $1 million jobs. Like, is it a reality, how a student or how a new graduate can make an effective resume, like long paragraphs, putting a very good picture on resume? Does it make any sort of effect on resume?
Yeah, I think, it depends how the resumes are being viewed, right? Because obviously, some companies use applicant tracking systems and other IT systems as well to track candidates. And you have to be very smart to write the wording in those CVs to make sure that those are captured by the ATS, right? Or by the system that's there. If you're applying, you're sending your resume through LinkedIn or contacting people through LinkedIn for roles, then your approach will be slightly different, correct? So you really want to make sure that you're understanding that person, what is the problem that they have. If you're openly sending your CV, right, to looking at opportunities and there's no open position, you're going to say, okay, basically, what are you offering, and what is the problem that you're trying to solve for this company, correct, or the person you're reaching out to. Why would they consider talking to you? If you do have a position that's posted and you're applying to that position, then you want to make sure that you are really capturing the essence of that role. What is that role out there to achieve? What are the expectations? And not only show that you can meet those expectations and targets and responsibilities, that you can exceed that, and you've showed how you've done that in the past before, right? And you've got the transferable skills, irrespective of where you worked before. You can still take those skills, those behavioral skills, just as important as your leadership skills or technical skills, and apply those to your new role. So those things have to shine through your CV.
But I'm curious to know because when a company announces any designation, they need person for this particular job. For example, video editor, graphic designer, web developer. So there are many numerous of people who are applying for that particular job or role. So like among numerous applicants, how a person, a new graduate, can outshine his CV. Like any mantras, because you have seen in your career many CVs, you have conducted many interviews. So for the guidance of our audience, can you share some little bit tricks with them?
From my perspective, right, and I'm a startup, right? So I've essentially launched my company only about a year and a half ago, and we're scaling to grow from there. And I've worked for organizations which have thousands of employees around the world. And I think from my perspective, it's really important to, especially with startups, to bring in general, I think if you take a step back, to bring in the right strategic advisors, right? The very experienced people who can help accelerate and launch that organization forward, right? The key roles you have to make sure you have the right business plan, the right implementation. Again, you can have the right strategy, the right business plan, the right ideas. Execution is where it all lies, right? You make sure people can come in there and really execute your vision, just get that company off the ground and start building from there. From my perspective, human capital is all about people, right? Having the right people with the right attitudes, the right values, the right skills come in there at the right time to the organization and help you build not just the products of the company or what it's offering, but really build systems inside the company gradually, right? Help you establish the right environments, help you establish the right processes in place, right? You want to make sure you're bringing in the right people and make sure you're designing the right systems for this company as it scales properly and doesn't just collapse on itself. So, and having the right people with that vision as well is important to have on board. Really make sure you understand each one understand what the role is in that organization, constant communication, accountability, right decision making processes. So there's no major mistakes along the way, and there will be mistakes, of course, right? But you minimize those risks, and really look at, okay, fine, what is the culture you want to set up in this company? These are things that sometimes startups don't look into until they're much larger in size. Only large organizations think they have those. And it's important for me. I think it's important to start from the get-go. What is your vision for how this organization is going to run, even if you're a startup? So do not wait to set your HR strategy until you're much larger, 100 or 200 employees or so, right? If you get to that point or more or larger, start from the beginning. What kind of a company do you want to function? Again, it's people, it's processes, it's technology, it's the organization itself. All that has to come together to build a very functional and strategic organization. So that's how it's very important, and to build the right culture through that company as it grows.
I see this that HR plays a bridge role between middle line managers to employees or CEOs to employees, right? So, like, how a good HR can build a healthy work environment in a company, and how he can help employees to get promotions.
If we take a step back again, if you look at human resources or human capital, that function altogether, its role is essentially to coordinate between, not just coordinate, right, to really drive value for the organization from the people perspective, right? And it covers many things, right? Recruitment, onboarding, culture, leadership, training, performance, rewards, etc., right? So, and the idea is to manage the relationship between the employees and management or the leaders of the organization. So they really are very much focused in general to make sure there's alignment, everyone's heading to the right mission, vision, and living the same values. They're helping execute the mission of the organization. They're building the capabilities that are required in the company as well. So it's really important because HR has a strategic role to do and has an operational role. You've got to manage your payroll and your recruitment and your employee relations, right? And everything that goes along with that and your compliance. But really, they want to look at building the company. I think from an organizational operational point of view, they have to look at building leadership in the company, in the organization, and they have to look at the culture and the performance of the organization, right? And that's what HR's role is. And it's really important, even in a startup, start keeping that in mind as you scale, that you're doing these correctly, right? Because companies that have those leading practices in place from a human capital point of view always add much more shareholder value. They're the ones that are more successful based on research. They're the ones that add the most value to shareholders if they're a public company. And HR has a much more crucial role, not just administratively, not just operationally, but strategically as well, to manage the organization, not just as a startup, because when you're a startup, you're going through a certain phase. Eventually, you're going to be going through multiple phases and stages as the company grows. That's going to require different talents and interventions and plans, particularly led from human resources as well. So I think that's really important what the role is for HR.
So there is another alarming situation, like new startups when they are hiring some new people, new manpower, new resources, right? They often say this, that you will get to learn a lot of things, right? And but we can't pay you that much. So how a good HR can negotiate on this particular in this particular situation, because the main role of HR is to develop a healthy work environment, right?
Again, when it comes to, I mean, what is compensation about, right? So you're there to reward an employee or a person who's working for the organization for what they're contributing to the company, correct? And again, it comes down to attraction, comes down to the market, comes down to supply and demand. So there are many factors that play into it. Ultimately, the company has to say, okay, how am I going to attract the right people with the right skill set and the right profiles in general, with the right values and attitudes that help us grow this company and fulfill what we need as an organization. To attract that people, you're looking at market data, you're looking at what salaries are being paid, and then you have to decide, okay, fine, am I competitive in this market or not? Am I offering the competitive rates to attract the right people to me and to retain them, right? Not just bring them through the door. The other part you want to look at, okay, compensation is one part in terms of cash. Non-cash rewards and compensation is another thing to pay attention to. That's your things like your benefits, like your insurance, like your vacation days, et cetera, right? Do you give paternity leave? Do you offer gym membership? Do you offer different things? So it could be so many different things as well. Flexible time, right? Things in terms of policy, remote work. It could go on and on and on, right? The other part is your company culture. I know employees who would work for a company and get paid less, and they're happy with getting paid less because of the company culture or the benefits that they get or the bosses that they work for. So the company has to really think about the overall employee value proposition that they're offering, right? In terms of advancement in career, skills that they're going to be gaining, mobility experiences, a chance to work around the world in different offices potentially. So when you put that all together, you have more leeway in your actual cash incentives, right, or cash salaries, and you can offer different benefits and different experience to employees that allows you to attract the right people. But again, don't just see it through a compensation salary point of view only. You have to look at it overall as how do we attract, retain, and motivate the right people to stay with this organization.
Okay, so do let me know, as an like a CEO. Now you are a CEO, right? So what is your take on remote working?
Absolutely. I mean, I believe in remote work. I work remotely sometimes. I work, if I'm traveling, that doesn't matter. Even my employees as well, they work remotely in different situations. We have a work from home policy as well sometimes where you can do that, work a couple of days from home or anywhere you want. It doesn't really matter to me if we have meetings remotely sometimes or online. It does make a difference that we do need people face to face. Of course, you want to keep that connectivity between people. It does help to meet face to face also as well. So we keep that always there. But I don't really manage people's time necessarily, kind of a, an 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, etc. Right? Everyone's running around. They're accountable for what they're supposed to be achieving. They're responsible, and they get what needs to be done. And I'm flexible. Everyone has a personal lives that they have to attend to certain things too, and we're kind of generally flexible with that, right? So, and the employees are always dedicated. They get the thing done, and they're happy doing it. So that's kind of been my experience.
75 to 65% startups burn out in last 5 years because they didn't have the right man for the right job and they were unable to build the right team. So how they can build, how like new leaders they can build right team, and digital readiness, it's a reality, and how it can boost employees trust.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts from the top, I think, right? So the leadership of the organization is the one that kind of sets the culture, right? And you've got to walk the talk. You've got to model what the behavior that you want, and the attitudes that you want to be seen throughout the organization. That's extremely important. That helps build the culture. You want to make sure you sustain that culture throughout the organization. Everyone brings their own backgrounds, their own attitudes and skills, but really, it all comes down to not just writing the values on the wall, and the culture is really about how you want this organization to be run. Is it a positive culture? And make sure you're living that on a day-to-day basis in everything that you do, in your communication with employees, how work is being delegated, how projects are being executed in terms of your policies and procedures, how communication is happening around talent and reviews, end of year or throughout the year as well. How training and interest in employees development is conducted. It has to touch every single aspect of the employee's journey throughout the organization, throughout the company. And that culture really has to be maintained and sustained by leadership. And they have to really live the talk, right? That they communicate. And that's extremely important. And if you have a bad culture, that's going to be extremely detrimental to any organization, irrespective of what you say, in your handbooks, whatever you hang on the wall, right? If that's not really being seen on the ground in reality by managers or top leadership, you're going to have a big issue with employee retention. You're going to have higher turnover. You're going to have excess absenteeism. I'm sure you do employee surveys, and then you're going to really realize that if you do those properly, you're going to realize that employees really pay much attention to not just their salaries, but really the work environment that they work with. And if you have a good culture, that's really going to be detrimental to the organization. I think definitely, I mean, if we start with the second part, and I hope I'm answering your question, I think definitely digital tools, digital capabilities are always very important. They're there to accentuate and to support driving the mission of your company, the experiences that you have, or the roles and responsibilities you're trying to do. So definitely it does help connectivity. It does help get work easily done. That's really, really important.
You are in Qatar, right? And the Middle East GCC market is booming right now. So, like, why this market is so attractive for investors?
It's interesting, right? Yeah, I've definitely seen a large um, investment and support from different sectors and the governments in the region for startups, right? There is a startup ecosystem that's really gradually building through different capabilities, being supported by lots of organization. So that ecosystem is been around for a couple of years or so, right? Slowly growing. A lot more to be done in that front as well, but it is booming, and there's a huge interest with helping startups, making the barriers for entry a little lower, encouraging people to come in with different ideas to set up their own businesses. I live in Qatar, but I work around the region, and every country has their slight differences. But what I see differently in Qatar is a lot of startups are coming in. Of course, that is tied to the regional economies, etc. So sometimes it's tougher than others. But there's a big interest on bringing startups in and providing that support. But I do think there's a lot more that can be done in that regard in terms of ease of regulations. It can be done easily. Things can be improved, let's say, in working on getting support from the government sector, which they're working very well on, getting support from the financial sector, getting support from consultancies, getting support from the overall ecosystem to make it as smooth as possible, provide the resources for these startups who want to grow and build. And that's happening very, very, fairly quickly in what I've seen in Qatar and the region as well. But I'm sure there's a lot more that can be done.
So, you are sitting in Qatar, right? So, name five businesses or industries will going to boom in upcoming 5 years or 10 years in Middle East region.
Look, it's very interesting because obviously you've seen that the entire region is really shifting, trying to move away from the purely oil and gas, right? Economies to a bit more on services, a bit more on digital transformation, investing much more in human capital. They're really looking at upskilling and reskilling for the future of work, what that should be. All the countries in the region have their visions, right, for 2030 or further than that. And a lot of it comes down to, and it ties to nationalization, it ties to upskilling for the future, make sure they have the right people. It's a very heavy expat population, as you know, right, in the Middle East, essentially, or especially in the GCC. And so part of it is, okay, fine, do we have the right people coming in to build and lift these economies? And what are we doing with our own populations in terms of upskilling and growing those as well? So they do want that. There's a big focus on leadership across all industries. I think the priority for them all, in terms of what I'm seeing across businesses, is I think there's a big focus on building these SMEs, whatever it is. I think, right. So leave it to the market to kind of decide. Okay, fine. These small and medium enterprises, and what do they want to start? Could be in any sector, right? Is it in services? Is it F&B? Is it in tech, etc. Right? There's much more growth in that area, and I think that's what some of these countries are trying to do. And they have to be constantly really aware of, okay, fine, how do you fit into this whole transformation that the whole region's going through, right? And these shifting economies and the populations of these countries in terms of being very expat heavy, right? Immigration restrictions sometimes that come and go, and really kind of looking at getting the right framework and support system for these organizations or these startups, irrespective of what industry they want to be in or irrespective of which sector they want to be in. There's a lot of opportunity there, and they have to do their business plans and their studies very accurately. They should do their market research well and really get into what they think the market should be going into over the next few years.
So, lastly, do let me know if you want to give advice to yourself. So, what sort of advice you want to give to your younger self?
Yeah, I think for me, again, like I said, it's after 20 years of working in industry and in large corporations or different organizations, started to take this journey on your own. What I would say is, if you've got that vision and you've got that passion to do it, it takes a lot of work. You need to be passionate about it. You need to push it through. But don't mix that with your abilities and skills and what you like to do, right? You've got to be good at what you do. You got to have the skills that are there as well, right? So I'm passionate about food and F&B and restaurants, right? But I'm not going to open a restaurant to run that, right? So, or become a chef. So it's this, passion is one thing. Being good at something else is something else. But if you've got that vision, something you want to accomplish, you've got to put your heart into it. You've got to put the hard work into it. Have that vision. Think big, take risks, right? Take calculated risks. If you want to achieve something, really make it, go for something further than that. Keep pushing for that. Connect with a lot of people. Listen to a lot of experts in the industry. I think that's really important. And constantly be willing and able to adjust and redirect as you build and grow your startup. I think, right, that's really very important, to keep your eyes and ears open on what's happening on the ground, in the market, etc., and be adaptable to the situation. I think that's very much key.
Thank you so much, Wael, for giving a masterclass on human resource, building value, and building a healthy environment in companies or startups. And I hope all the viewers will going to love the podcast. If you love the podcast, do subscribe the channel, press the bell icon, and we will be going to meet you in another exciting episode. Till then, keep daring, keep lusting, and keep achieving your goals.